And well, this is. Then when I was growing up, well, I remember first in 2002 that we always had breaking news on the TV, always, as a kid. And I remember my parents going to these massive demonstrations, and we saw on TV how the dictatorship was shooting at the civilians. And I remember being really scared, I remember being in shock, but I also remember that drawing and writing were my tools of with the anxiety I had in those moments. So I had sketchbooks and journals since I was like 7. I really remember all these things because I have them written in my journals as a kid. So now as an adult I see them and I'm like, it is overwhelming to read it. And after, when I was studying in the university with journalism, I was really involved in the social movement, and we saw terrible things in those demonstrations. We saw friends being arrested because they were speaking up. So that's why we decided to leave Venezuela and go to Mexico City, where I have lots of family. And when I arrived to Mexico, I fell in love with this country, and I feel responsible of making it a better one. If there's a doctor here, maybe with a stethoscope, he would hear a weird remix between Venezuelan music. Years of making cartoons, because I started when I was a university student. I also added to my topics Mexico, and I started to draw also about Mexico. And I realized that something always happened when I drew politicians on my cartoons. People went crazy on social media. They fought with each other. They fought with me. They insulted me. It went crazy. And people focused on being angry about this politician and forgot about the issue I wanted to solve, the issue I was drawing about. So hatred was the most common reaction every time I drew a politician. And that's how, and there's some crazy stories about some of my cartoonist friends that actually received offers from these politicians wanting to buy their cartoons for themselves. So I couldn't believe it, and I decided I'm going to change the way I work, and I'm going to stop drawing these politicians, and I'm going to focus on the issue and solving the issue. And it is important to say that this way of doing it does not make me neutral. I'm always with human rights. I changed the perspective of doing it. I'm doing it like from the point of view of people and how people see power. So I draw about these politicians without drawing them, actually. And this not only generates a connection with the reader, I give them like a puzzle with some missing pieces, and the reader is really smart. They put their own pieces in the missing spaces, and they add their own interpretation, and they usually know who I'm talking about. So I generate this kind of inside joke with them, or complicity with them, and then also I avoid censorship that is really common in Mexico and Venezuela. So after doing this, I think my work turned to be more profound, more open to interpretation, and also universal. Once one person said to me that she thinks that my work are like wordless essays, and I really love that term because I identify myself with that. And well, when I decided to do this little change in the way I did my cartoons, in focusing on solving the problem and in the issue and not only drawing the politician, I decided to see firsthand all the issues I usually draw about. And that's how I started to listen to the mothers of the disappeared women in Mexico. I started doing workshops in prisons. I started also doing workshops on the refugee centers in the borderline. And these experiences not only give me, of course, I feel sad and angry every time in those experiences, but they help me understand the world more, and they help me transmit my pain into the drawing to make people care. So this is how people start to unite to solve a problem, although their way of thinking is very different. I'm going to show you an example. In Mexico, 10 women are murdered every day, and it's getting worse. And I did this cartoon because I felt so angry about every time I hear another case. And people united to try to solve this problem. And I'm talking about all types of people. This is a football player, a comedian, and a car racer, everyone. So I like to make people think and feel with my cartoons. I believe art generates empathy and connects people. And I'm really happy to be here to speak to you, because sometimes art is underestimated, and I think art has the power of generating this empathy that unites everyone. Creating beauty out of chaos is my way of speaking up. What's yours? Thank you.
Let's see if my microphone works now. Okay.
Yeah.
Usually this is the moment when the audience gets the chance to ask a question, but the speaker has already asked a question. Does anybody want to engage with that? Does anybody respond? What is your way of speaking up?
I don't know if it's super related, but I thought it was a nice thing to share. I'm from Spain. I'm studying here in The Hague, and since I moved here, I also, because I'm studying international relations, so I met a lot of people that really, at the end, transformed chaos into something. Everyone had different ambitions, and I met this group of people, and also like a lot of artists, because I'm also studying photography, like parallel side. And we're doing kind of like a feminist collective in The Hague. And I mean, of course, you're like literally the whole world is putting your slogans. Wow. It's amazing. But I wanted to share it because there's also like the local art of activism. And here in The Hague, a bunch of international students are working to create a network here. And I thought it's a really nice initiative which started a few months ago, but it's working. And I think it's basically the same idea of putting everyone's chaos into something that it can actually like represent and change something.
That's great.
Feminist collective in The Hague. Let's see if anybody can beat that.
The pressure. Hi. First of all, really thank you so much for your work. My name is Galia. I'm Mexican, and I think what you are doing is exactly what we are all doing. That is trying to show the world in our different views how we are fighting for. And the message is the same, but the forms are different. And my question related to all this power that now your eyes have shown us is, you have immigrated as well as me. But I will ask you if does that exist nowadays, migration for women, for actually avoiding that gender-based violence that is actually 11 women in Mexico that are dying. Do you think it's actually now a trend to immigrate, not for economic causes, not for war, not for, just for the pandemic women? Misogyny, pure misogyny, such as actually Mexico and Venezuela.
Yeah, I believe that any form of art or passion, if you can try to help through what you love to do. The example is with the football player, the comedian, and you don't need to have a talent to help. I think you could help in any way. And yes, of course, Mexico has a big problem with migration, but it is not only because economical conditions, it is because of the violence we live in Mexico. And every time we hear a case, we feel powerless because it keeps happening. And people go out, when we went on 2020, there were so many people, I couldn't believe it, and it's still happening. So this is like a work of every day. It's not like only, well, I do a drawing and that's it. I really believe that feminism, you have to, it is a verb, you know, you have to be one and include it in your actions. So, well, thank you for your...
Thank you so much. We will have an opportunity to come back together and ask Camila more questions. So I think now we will move to the next speaker. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
And I will invite Jane Meriwas from the Samburu Women Trust in Kenya, who will speak about women and the climate crisis, but also empowering women to participate in decision making, to access education. Jane is also a fellow of the OHCHR, Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Minorities and Indigenous People Program, and she is an indigenous leader herself. Jane, please.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jane Meriwas. I am a mother, a very proud pastoralist child, and a very strong women human rights defender, as well as a former senior human rights fellow. I come from Samburu community in Kenya, and Samburu community, we are indigenous people, pastoralists who move with animals here and there. Being born up or grown up in that environment, which I still love dearly, so much. Patriarchy is key because of cultural dynamic, which mostly deny women and girls an opportunity to go to school, to make a decision, or even to inform anything across. Telling my personal story is that I was born in a very rich family. Of course, my dad, 100 cows, that's being rich. You cannot transform, buying animals into money. By then, we were 2 girls. And I don't know if it is African setup, if a man have girls, it means that there is no continuity of that family. The man has to remarry so that he has a boy child. Unfortunately, by bad or good luck, I think he married and he was a rich man. So me and my sister is an elder, I'm the last born. So my sister was married off at 10 years old. I didn't believe that educating a girl is key. When I was around 9, 10, I was looking after my dad's goat. Then there was a very good friend of mine, I keep on saying dearly, the hyena. it killed 10 goats. Unfortunately, because there were like 300, I didn't notice. So when I went back home in the evening, so my dad quickly, being the administrator, looked after his goat that there was some which he looked at me and asked me what happened. I could not explain. Of course, I was given a thorough beating, and my dad decided that I'm very useless. And he donated me to the Catholic mission. And that's how my life turned around. That's how I went to school, and I never looked back. Along the way, when I was in high school, my mom was a very strong supporter, despite the fact that she could not control, so show that she cannot support me. So, brother to my dad had a round meeting at home. I did not know, and they called me. I don't know how they called me, and they asked me their final decision. We want your dad to marry, and already they had identified a suitor, a woman with a boy child. And by then, my dad was old, and the lady was going to get married almost like my age. So I asked them, thank you for the opportunity, but does my decision count anyway? But I said, if my dad wants to marry, it is his decision. He has the resources. Mine doesn't count. So my only wish is one. If my mom had small goats, they're almost like 10, because she was selling them. My wish is just you give me those 10 goats, then I can sell, I can support myself as I finish high school and maybe join the college or university. Then you can remarry and use whatever you want to do with your resources. Because of course I don't count, I'm a woman. By then I don't know what happened. My dad said, I'm not going to marry. I don't know how. And then that one now throw back the ball to my uncles. Why? Why do you want to marry? You want your legacy to end. But he stood his ground. But that was now. I didn't know that from that time. I was around 15, 14, I was doing activism. I didn't know. But my dad changed his mind. But then I gave him my words. If I happen to finish college or university, I'll come for you. By then I kept my word. After I finished my university, I went back to the village and picked my dad. Then I was living in an urban center, which same Catholic mission gave me some work that I was doing around issues on women empowerment. Then I convinced my dad to leave the village and come live with me. Do you know why? I wanted to change that mindset that if men doesn't believe in women or girls, that even if you empower a woman, you've empowered the whole society. So when I was going to meeting and talking to villages, women and elders, I was tagging my dads around. But he did not understand. But I had a meeting within myself, and I told myself, I have to convince my dad, and he has to change this mindset of these elders. So when you go to the meeting, when I finish the meeting, I'll tell my dad, now this is your do the final prayer. But before you do the final prayer for closing the meeting, can you tell this meeting how you've seen me grow, why you didn't believe in my education, and now you're staying in my home in a polite way. So slowly, like 10 years, unfortunately, may soul rest in peace, 10 years, we've walked the journey with my dad. I'm able to turn around and convince him that if you had given my sister an opportunity, she could be maybe a lawyer, maybe a president, or even somebody better than me. But because you never believed in educating a girl, now your daughter is here to make sure that I have changed the society. Men like you that taking girls, giving women opportunity and hope are going to school. Besides that, we were able, then I started the Samburu Women Trust. those are almost 12 years down the line, then I could drag my dad along and speak in the meeting. Of course, the community I come from is a patriarchy. Women cannot speak in front of men. By then, you cannot say anything, you cannot influence anything. So I could drag my dad and have conversation with elders, while myself I have conversation with women, and making sure that all of us meet along the way. Currently, as we speak, we have close to almost 100 girls. 100 girls who have not gone FGM, forced marriages, and girls who have finished high school, university. Some of them are working. Some of them have confidence like me. Some of them who can change the narrative and say where I come from. We had a chance, despite, the journey that it was wrong. And these are some of the resilient. These are some of the stories, and hope that we keep on saying that if you share our stories in different spaces, these are some of the things that we say that empowering a woman, you empower society. Look at me. It's quite different, despite the fact that where we come from, access to education, access to information like reproductive right is still a challenge. But there's still hope. If you make sure that women and girls access to school. The other good example is that currently in Kenya, we have an act that we call the Community Land Act, where we are fighting for women to access and control and manage resources, not just property, that you can even give a title. And we are even happy to say that majority of indigenous women have title deeds, and they can even access resources. It has not been easy, but having conversation, making sure that information is key. Women can access, women can say this is right, they can say this is not right, and beginning make sure that from when we are very young, a lot of information, having a lot of confidence, having a lot of making sure that girls also understand it very well, because when you say that you're empowering women, we're also empowering girls, because that is where the transition to come to womanhood, then it means that the society is empowered. These are some of the stories that I think that sharing and access, we say fighting for justice. We make sure that there's equal spaces, but some of the spaces we come from, it's not equal. One, because of different dynamic. Either because it is vast, it's not accessible, or even there is not internet that everybody can use phone. And even if there is internet, or even how many people can afford the phone to tweet. And also because majority of them do not, do not read and write. So there is no more work to do. But beside that, there is still more hope. Even if somebody has not gone to school, but access information, you'll be able to say, this is right, this is not right. This is what I want, this is not what I want, right? So more conversation, more support, more hope, and more resilient. Resilient, for people like me, stories of change. That's what I say, that I don't really need to do PowerPoint, but I think myself I'm a PowerPoint. Right? Right. Thank you so much.
Now it is an opportunity for you to ask questions, unless you would like to ask a question of the audience. But please, if you would like to ask a couple of questions. Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, because I was interested in how, you come from an indigenous community, which I guess has a long story of tradition. How do you encounter the moment of presenting such a new ideas as emancipation? How is the kind of the trade-off? I don't know how to put it in another word, but the moment of these two ideas collapsing, and how do you experiment it as a person that is really proud and wants to hold this tradition, but at the same time putting new ideas and new inputs? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Of course, challenging the patriarchy and the tradition is sometimes difficult, but even the approach how you use is key. Personally, what I've been using is that we try to use different, setup, having conversation with elders, young people, women, girls, and everybody, making sure that all of us are in the same roadmap and making sure that everybody understands the conversation. You know why we do that? We do that so that we don't put women and girls at risk, so that at the end of the day when they go home, they are not going to be beaten. So that elders and young people understand, if we talk about female genital mutilation, early marriages, who make decisions, it is men. So they understand why it is important to support their children like girls, to support their women. It is easier. So that is how I've been navigating, and to me, it has worked positively. But sometimes when you leave one gender out, it became a bit technical. But for me, that's what I've been working, and it has been working well. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
You might have actually covered this, but I'm curious to find out, having grown up in the more rural part of Kenya and then obviously relocated to the more urban sector, how much of your work that you're doing at the moment is still in the rural parts of Kenya?
I'm still actually living in the rural. Urban means that a small town within the same rural setup. So I've not actually migrated to a bigger city. I'm still living in the rural. So far, there's a lot of beautiful strides and milestones that we've made, that even women can stand in front of men and address, not like before, 10 years ago. Many girls are accessing schools. A lot of women can also make decisions on reproductive rights, that this is what I want, this is not what I want. So slowly we are changing the narrative, but still more need to be done, and the conversation need to be live. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't think I see an immediate hand up. So let's thank Jane one more time for the presentation. And now it is really my honor to invite to the stage Grace Acham, who is a founding member of a global network of victims and survivors to end wartime sexual violence, SEMA. Grace is a survivor herself. She has spent 8 years as a captive of Ugandan rebels, an experience that she wrote about in her 2018 book, Not Yet Sunset. Grace works to support women who were abducted during the war, and she will speak to us about her struggle for justice.
Hello everyone. Where do I start from? Let me start from my humble beginning. As I was growing up, we were in one town, and then again they transferred my father to work somewhere. So when we went to the next school in another district, this is where I started seeing injustice, and I think that's why I started fighting it from when I was in primary. So as soon as the first day I entered a class, I found all the girls sitting on the dusty floor and all the boys were sitting on the desks. And I was like, what is going on? I went straight and sat on the desk. And the boys started saying, what kind of girl is this? Girls are sitting down, and that kind of patriarchy that Jen was talking about. Boys felt so superior, and yet they were very young boys and intimidating big girls. I was like, no, this is not what I know. I know everyone is supposed to sit up. I sat up, I continued with the lessons. It was like a challenge to them, but I was determined. So I started asking, why are girls sitting down? So they told me the girls are not bright. And I was like, no, this is not right. But I continued. So from there they started, what kind of girl is this? But within my heart I was like, a right thing has to be done. and I wanted to put it right. So whenever I see any wrong thing going on, I felt like it should be this way, not that way. And I started saying, I think I want to prove that even girls are bright. They can pass exams as well as boys. So I started competing in class. It started from there. And so the story went on for like 2 years when I went to a secondary school, and unfortunately I was abducted from my secondary school. We were in competition with these boys from the other school. So still, I still had the idea of correcting that wrong thing that was happening. I wanted to prove them. They would challenge me. You know, girls are not supposed to study. After all, you're going to become pregnant and you drop out of school. We shall study, become. I said, you will see. So that heart was there to change something wrong. So after my abduction, we were like 139 girls. So they chose only 30, and I happened to be one of them. So they took us, and I stayed for 8 years. It's a long story, which you can read us from Not Yet Sunset, because I narrated it very well. So after struggling and returning home, escaping, I got home and things had changed. But all these years I've been in captivity, my heart was like, I want to go back to school. I want to go back to school. I need to reclaim my life. So when I came back home, my parents got me back home, and I was welcomed, shown love, and I went back to school. It was not easy. Still, there was another challenge. You know, after staying away out of school for years, you're getting to this school, studying with children, and, you know, picking up from there. So we did an exam after just 2 weeks of rejoining school, and I was the second best in the subject that I like, which is biology. This encouraged me so much, and I said, I can still make it. So I continued, but during my vacation, I joined an organization that's working with conflict-affected persons. There we had storytellings with affected women, which I knew most of. So, and when we were in captivity, we knew most of them. So we were like, it was like a reunion, sort of. So in the project, I got to realize there are issues, challenges that are going on as a result of the conflict that they went through. They were rejected from communities. They had medical issues. They had economic issues. They were facing psychological problems that needed attention. So it was a lot, plus their children. So me and my other colleague, we said, are we going to look at these challenges without doing anything, even if the research project was done? So we started brainstorming the names, and we formalized the organization, which is the Women's Advocacy Network. This is where we started doing advocacy. In our advocacy, first of all, the formation, we started as 5 women came up with this idea, and they would meet every weekend, every Saturdays to kind of talk, like peer support. This encouraged so many other women joined. There was one group, and later we formed 3 groups in the same town. And as I speak, we are about 700 women in like close to 10 districts in the whole north of my country. So like it was so encouraging. With the words we speak, we encourage each other. We said it's not the end of life. You can work. You can do this. So in the process, we had nothing completely, but what we did was, we would say, the only resources we have, we can still move to stakeholders who we think can help us. So we go to leaders, we target leaders, we go to their offices and we say, we are women affected by war. This is what we would like you to do for us. Who is giving support on medication? Who is giving support? Who can give support on psychosocial support? Who can give a livelihood support? We have this kind of women suffering, so we knew each one of them. So later, something they called a meeting, like a press conference, and I remember speaking. It was on national TV, but still, just to create awareness. We were not yet getting the right response, and up to now, we haven't got the right response that it's enough for everyone. But yeah, it's one. They pick 1, they pick 2, they pick 3. At least that is something being done. But we still need more. We did not only do that. We were being housed by an organization that was working with conflict. So then, as we speak now, we are independent. But the line of work that we did was we went to radio stations, we sensitized communities to stop stigmatization. We call upon stakeholders who were giving support in all these issues. For example, those who are doing medical rehabilitation did it for the women, for the few. Those who were doing psychosocial support did that. Those who were helping with a few children were picked up for education that helped their parents. Jane talked about patriarchal societies. One challenge that many of the children, because most of these women who were held in captive came back with children, and being a patrilineal society, a child always belonged to the father's side, and the nature in which these children were born was not in I don't know, legally you say not a legal way, because there was no marriage, no consent between the mother. It was just like through abductions, and young girls were abducted and given to old men, and it was a nasty one. So these children on return home, they are not accepted. And what we are doing, or what we did and we are still doing, is what we call child tracing. After these children have grown up, they start asking for their identity. They ask their parents, or if they meet somebody talking negatively about them, because they have even been given negative names. So they come when they're very angry to their mothers and they say, tell me what happened? Like, how did I came to be on earth? How did you produce me? What happened to you? So it is a very traumatizing thing for the mother if the mother had not told the child. So what we do is, if like I said before, while in captivity, most of these women knew each other so much, so at least some information was known about the father. So we would go do what we call child tracing. We organized as a group of women. We try to find the exact home where this man was, because most of these men have died. Others, if they're alive, then they're still there, but most of them have died, and it's very hard. They did not disclose their real homes for security purposes in case they escaped home. So it was very hard. But for the few that has been done, what I'm trying to say is also justice to the children. It's trying to make them know their rights, their paternity, their home. It is satisfactory to them. And this brings me to say, justice is not just the legal aspect of it. Justice is social. If these women are accepted into the community and they live peacefully, that is justice for them. If they are given economic support, since they have not studied, and they are now living a kind of like, how can you live your life doing casual work all through your life because you have not studied? That is justice for them if economic activity started for them. Those who are sick, justice for them is getting medication. Yeah, those who have who need psychosocial support, for them justice is that. That way for me, when it comes to justice, I don't have a single word to say justice. To a survivor, justice is the specific need. And for us to say someone has attained justice, I relate to what we call reparations, which is for someone to say I am fully repaired, it should be holistic. You may find the same survivor needs social justice, needs medical justice, needs the legal justice. All aspects of this justice are important. And if they are combined and someone receives it, I think that's the most important thing. And what I can say, what really gives me strength to do this work is that, when you feel it, we have a saying in my language that when someone has been, I don't know the right word to use, beaten or hit by rain, when you're moving and you're going somewhere, rain gets you somewhere. So you got drenched up. So it is only you who can speak how cold that rain is. So this is why I'm saying, what gives me really the courage or motivates me to continue doing this work that I'm doing, speaking for other survivors, is the fact that I feel the pain that they went through as well. So I know what it means when someone has gone through that. So that means I understand So when someone says this, I know, yes, this is how it means. And so the fact that they have not yet attained all that they need, we have not yet achieved fully or fully addressed their challenges, it will not stop me from like speaking for them, doing something for us. I should say for us, because if I say them, it means I'm pushing that kind of name away from me. So that's what I have to say. Yeah. But in doing this, there are setbacks as well. First of all, it's not easy. Like in the first stages, it wasn't easy because everyone is a community. Like in my communities, having seen the atrocities that the rebels did in the community, like to come out in that very hot space again to say yes, we are this kind of people. Yeah, it's not. It's risky. We risk stigmatization. Some people risk being like sent away from communities, you know, and even like politically, although it has not happened, but there is that. Yeah, there is a lot of risk in doing that. But because you feel that pain, you know, when it is paining you when you have a swollen space, some spots swollen. It is you who feel the pain. So it is you who should walk out and ask for like support for that. So that's all I can share for now. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Jane. Grace, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. It's hard to be a moderator after your speech because I would like to ask some questions. And also I would like to express a lot of admiration for what you are doing. But I am bound by my role as a moderator to give the floor to the audience. So yes, please, if anybody would like to respond to...
I will give my question to you.
Okay. That's new.
You can ask your question, but in my place, as a moderator.
Yes, I think what I would like to ask Grace is, yeah, you spoke about it a little bit, but this very difficult balance between the challenges that you face and the motivation that keeps you going. So I wanted to ask if you can speak a little bit more about where you find those resources to go on together with the women that you are supporting. Yeah.
There's a saying that when you are together, you are strong. When you are alone, you cannot do it much. So, and I would just let the world to know that each one of us is gifted in its own ways. And when we put all these gifts together, we can achieve our greater goals. So in this process, like the way we do it, I got a chance to go to school and I can speak English. I have some skills in project management. My friends have not gone back to school, but they have the skill to say, I think if you do it like this. So we work together without seeing that somebody has gone to school or not. We all come to the same level when it comes to planning, and we do it as a team. Yeah. So me alone, I cannot do it. And so that's my advice as well. Together, we can.
Thank you so much. I think that is the perfect way in which we can move to the next segment of our talk, where I am inviting all the speakers to come to the stage and join each other and me. And it was really nice, Grace, how you've already started referring to what Jane has said. So I think you've already started talking among yourselves. So this is the kind of discussion that we would like to have now for about half an hour. I think I can start off the discussion, but I wonder if somebody else wants to ask a question to all the speakers. Yes.
Indeed, it was really inspiring to hear all the good stories. Thank you so much. I have a question to all of you. What opportunities do you see for collaboration or common actions to advance justice for women globally and locally? Thank you.
On this side, I think I can say, first of all, I will start with locally. Locally, you can, if you can reach the women themselves, because there is this thing that I believe in, that involve the person who you want to change life in order to get the right way of changing their lives. Involve the women themselves, and you can link up with other organizations nationally and internationally to create a sustainable means of creating the change that you want. Thank you.
Well, I think that joining forces with everyone you meet is really important, and know that every little effort you do is important. Not only like big things you do, but tiny little actions. I think also that listening is really important, and we usually take for granted many things. So part of my way of thinking is every time you can do something that makes your life and the life of the rest better.
For me, social movement is also important to bring that collectiveness and collective voice, either from Africa, Asia, or even Europe, that collectiveness, and making sure that our voice is strong, because when all of us come collectively, then it's easy for us to influence different spaces rather than people fighting for their own spaces. But when all of us come together, it gives us more voice. Thank you.
So now I wonder if our colleague here is going to join the Samburu Women Trust, or you are going to join the Feminist Collective of The Hague. Yes, I think that's I couldn't agree more with what you've just said. I think there was there a question here in the front? Yes.
Yes, thank you. So yes, this was very inspiring. I see three very strong, inspiring women before me, and you've inspired me during this event as well. But I just wanted to ask you, for each of you, who has been your biggest inspiration during your work, and maybe from growing up? Is there a figure in your life that you dedicate a lot of your work to, or that has inspired you throughout all?
To me, I think it is the world that has given me a lot of inspiration. The hard world. Because growing up, my mother was hard and undisciplining, and everything was hard. But I grew up someone who was would always listen to them. And I never even had time to read books, but I would listen from class. And then when I get home, there's so much work. But within my heart, I was like, I think I need to do something to make life a better one, even if mine was not good. So that has been already in me. And yeah, but I admire women, mothers, the courage and all they go through. Yeah, that's all I can say.
I think that we should all be in contact with different experiences that ground you in many ways. That's why I usually try to be in contact with different kinds of people. When I went to the workshops with in prisons or to the refugee centers, I usually try to be inspired by people by listening. And I give these workshops, but I end up learning more every time. So I think everyone should be trying to constantly be in touch with many realities that aren't in your daily normality, would I say.
What inspired me is that woman who work 24 hours without sleeping, making sure that her children have gotten, a better life, or even to put food on the table. And even mostly, what inspired me is story like Grace, that there's a lot of hope, despite the fact that you've reached to the end, there is no hope. But at the end of the day, she's the shining light, and there's hope at the end of the tunnel. So these are some of the things that keep on giving me hope to continue fighting for justice, believing that if I lose hope, then how many millions of girls and women who are suffering, who have nothing or somebody to look after for. So these are some of the hopes that it keeps us pushing through. And when you see women who have not even gone to school, who have nothing or even resources, or even, even just to influence their own husband to take their children to schools, or even to put food on the table, but they are resilient, keeping on, holding on. These are people who give me hope every day. Thank you.
I think there was a question here.
Thank you so much. I want to start off by saying that this was a very powerful session. I think most of the time we take it for granted that a lot of things start with a story. A lot of beliefs that we have about ourselves, a lot of a tool that's used to marginalize a certain group is often a story. You were told that women can't do certain things, or that men are better at certain things. Most of the time, the things you're told you can't do, or you're told that this is the box you belong in, is not proven fact, but it's a story that you have been told by people who are trying to build a certain narrative or enforce a certain narrative to keep the status quo. So thank you so much for the session. I have two questions. The first one is, what role does anger play in keeping your fire burning, if any at all? And my second question is, what tools and or resources do each of you need now or need more of to make doing your work a little easier?
Thank you so much. So I answer that question, or answer the one I feel that I'm comfortable. Thank you for the opportunity. I think when you ask about resources, One thing I wish to request or even to put across is that where we come from, most of the resources is in the hand of the funders, or even countries with resources here like Netherlands, UK, and other people with less resources. So we want just to request them, even if you have resources, is it possible to also give those people with needs and prioritize your resources according to the needs of the people you want to support, not to impose that these are the resources we have and impose on them. I think if they can be flexible, it can be better. But as long as the resources you have and you keep on imposing, then it becomes also difficult. So I think it's something not I'm answering, but it's something that we also request the people with the resources. If you really need to support a cause, please support a cause where also people give priority and things. These are the key issues that you need to support, but don't support where you also give a restriction. I don't know if I answered your question. Thank you. Maybe you can answer part 2.
I can answer the first one.
Yeah.
All my best ideas, I think, they come from anger. I think that when I get like an idea and people empathize with the drawing, it is when I'm the most angry. And I think that anger is normally seen as a negative thing, but it is a reaction. It is better than not caring at all of what's happening. So I think if you manage to I don't know, control your anger and let yourself feel it and find a way to transform it into something beautiful or something that adds something to society, let's all be angry, I think. We should.
The issue of anger is a tricky one. It's a negative reaction. Like in the field where I am, anger does not solve any problem. I remember we did it was a strategy to actually let local leaders understand the importance that everyone is important despite their status. So in all our groups, we did it on the same day. We went to headquarters of the district, the women groups in all the areas. We just said, today we want to clean your area. We only want to clean. It was just like social justice, like we want to clean this place. It's nothing. We came with all our things, all our brooms, so we cleaned their toilets, the compound, everything, their offices, and then they kept saying, who are these? Others were saying funny things, negative things. But the reaction for us, we were like, that is not what we want. For us, we want the positive part of it. We are doing it for positive reasons. So whatever negative things have been said, let it be there. So in the part of the work that I do, or maybe even for the rest, I think, anger is not the best way. And usually when someone says that, when it comes to also stigmatization, when someone is stigmatizing you and you retaliate with anger, you are not solving anything. For us, instead, what we do, we call the person and we say, come wait, please let me tell you more. Yes, exactly, this is what happened to me. And it has not changed me from being a human being. I am still here. I did not intend it. I did not want to be that way. So that's enough. That will calm that person down. So if you go like in anger, you will not be solving anything. So all you want is peace so that we have, yeah. And so on the issue of, I think the question is resources.
The first one. The second.
Yeah. I think for resources, I think if you have the means and the organizations that are working directly with people and targeting these areas are the ones you should target, so that a sustainable means of way of solving those issues are created. I think this will be very important. Thank you.
Did you want to respond to that?
Thank you very much for your presentations. And as Jane rightly mentioned, there are still millions of girls and young women who still suffer injustice or facing injustice, and very often they face with pressure from the traditional societies. And I was wondering if you can give a piece of advice to young women, to girls, what they should start from, how to begin this kind of movement like you are pursuing. Just a piece of advice for the young girls who suffer from injustice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother. I think building self-confidence, starting for young girls, making sure that they understand what is right, having that self-esteem for themselves, so that they're able to stand for themselves. If you begin from there going up, then it's easier even for those millions of women in villages to know what is right, what's not right, and even giving them a lot of information in their own local languages. They understand and they are updated what is happening in the other part of the world, as well as making sure that you also equip women with resources. If a woman doesn't have resources, it's difficult even to empower her own girl or her own child, and even to influence in any space, including from her own home where she has a husband. It's difficult if you don't have a resource. And if a woman always depends on a man to buy for her sanitary pad at the end of the month, that is where the beginning of trouble and gender-based violence is increasing. So empowering a woman is key, and giving her that support so that she can able have that voice to influence every space. So when you're empowering both girls, then also the mother have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think a bit the same as Jane. Educating girls that their voice are important and have the same value as boys. It is I think the beginning of all. When you have girls who believe in themselves, they're unstoppable. I think that is the beginning of all, and it starts in the house. You know, it's your job as a parent to make her believe it, because she is unstoppable.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Another thing is there is empowering a girl, but which space is a girl going to exercise on this? I think the society as well should be sensitized. They should be aware that some of these things that is done, that culture does, is negative on girls, and so it should change. I can start doing my work as an activist, but if the society doesn't believe in it, it is useless. So it starts from educating the girl to know the wrong things, then later goes to the society. It multiplies like that, then there can be change. And also, as mothers, it's good for us to be role models, to show our girls that this is wrong. So the girl will be growing knowing this is not right. This was not done this was not done in my house, in our family, this was not the right thing, so I will not accept it to happen. So it gives them the space to say no to what is not right. That's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There are two questions here. The lady behind you was first. So, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, dear speakers. It was very interesting to hear your presentation. It was amazing, and your stories. It was very personal and touching. You mentioned how important it is to encourage young girls and women to stand up, to speak up for themselves. But how do you see it? How we can encourage women? How we can encourage young girls? I myself, I also came from the very conservative and traditional community. I represent Romani people. So I understand how hard it is sometimes to talk about this with young girls, with women, especially in patriarchal communities. I faced it myself, so I understand it, and I just want to hear from your perspectives. How do you feel? How do you see how we can encourage women? How we can encourage girls? Because society and communities, they put a lot of pressure on them. They don't give them space, you know. Even though sometimes women don't want to, you know, to talk about this, that it's actually not their inside thing, but it's outside. That the pressure comes from the society, from men in the families. So what would be your advice? How to deal with this kind of pressure from families, from society, from communities? What to do? How to encourage them? For instance, if women are afraid to speak up for themselves, if girls are afraid to, I don't know, to get negative reactions from their family, to get education, to create a career for themselves. So I would be very grateful for your responses. Thank you.
Why don't you pass the microphone to, maybe you can tell us your name also, because...
My name is Olena.
Okay. And now your question.
My question?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask because like your activism and the stories you were presenting were kind of focused on local or like a country or an area, and I was curious about how, because I feel like the way I approach feminism is always in a more like local based approach, both in like the country I'm from and here. But I'm really interested in how you transform that to an international system and to international institutions, because since I came here to The Hague, everything is how The Hague is the city of all the countries coming together to do peace and justice. But I really don't see, like, I don't know, I'm just curious about how your own projects or your own activism, if it reached at some point the international level, if didn't, or like the obstacles you found on reaching this, like from the local base to the international scope, basically. Thank you.
So I go first. Thank you so much, Elena, and my sister. I think to answer your question, women just need economic justice. If a mother is really empowered with the resources, then she's in a position to support her girl. But as long as both of you are disadvantaged, then it means it's also difficult. And then there's also need for parents to take leads, making sure that they support the young girls when they are growing up. Let them know this is not right, this is wrong, and making sure that they supported them to stand, especially in a society which doesn't give women and girls spaces to make the right decision. Once, when you're growing up knowing that I have a very strong support from my mother, you always have that confidence to move ahead. But as long as you delink yourself, because mother are the backbone of each family. So you know that you're very strong, leave alone your father, even your strong mom is supporting you, you always have a lot of hope to move further. But beside that, it's always important for women to have that link, economic justice, because you don't influence any space if you don't have anything, like resources. Even if you talk here 1,000,000 times and you don't have that power, you'll never influence anything. But when you have that, economic justice, then you are able to influence your own space, including even your own husband. It's easier to influence. Then your questions, you ask about how do we, is there anything that we're able to access from the local to international or even to regional platform discussion around issues?
It's more like, what is not working? It's more like how more like local or national projects of like activism, like how is the path to bring it to the international community, or like how do you do it, and in case you can't, why, or like how the international community receives this kind of initiatives or projects?
I think, talking from my experience, we've been connecting through with other movements, starting from the ground, at the national level, at the regional and international platform, making sure that if we have something that we are pushing at the national level, and we set our counterpart at the regional level, then they push at the international level. So there is flow of information and putting a lot of pressure across board. That one is also helped to raise a lot of concern, a lot of issues that we find that at the local level it is difficult to raise and discuss. And sometimes even we use other partners, not within Kenya, but others that they can, share information and call a lot of action at different spaces. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
You look a bit, I'm not answering. Maybe my colleague can answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Answering the first one, from my point of view of art, I think that if little girls see women speaking up through any way, in my way is art, you're opening like a way for them to not be scared and follow the same trace. In Mexico, for example, or in Venezuela, when I grew up, there was just one woman cartoonist in Venezuela, one. And in Mexico, I know like 2 or 3, and I'm one of them, and I'm not even born in Mexico. So I think that if more women occupy spaces where we can like give the example that you can go there, it is a good way of doing it. And the second question, in my work, when I did this tiny change in the way I did it, I did it to make it universal. That's why I don't use words. That's why I don't use local faces, or sometimes I don't use flags. So, and I was giving the example of Guernica de Picasso, that it was made from a local issue and it became a global symbol that people, although the context isn't the same right now, it works and it represents war. Or so I try to do that with my work. Although I'm speaking about migration in Venezuela, people from Mexico can relate, people from other countries that don't speak Spanish can relate. So I try to do it in that way, to open up, to represent other types of voices. Maybe I don't even, sometimes I draw something and for someone, it's open to interpretation. For someone, maybe I'm representing their situation and I'm not even noticing it. But I try to open up to make it more universal. That's a thing I have in mind always.
I don't know whether I'll answer your questions directly, but I would like to say even empowered women should be contagious. Let's not look at others who are not yet empowered and we pass by. Let's touch their lives with words, with the little we have. They will do the same because they will not forget it. I'll give you a very small story. Just 2 months ago, I was traveling and I entered the bus. I saw this lady. She was being sent out of the bus. She had a kind of a 12-year-old girl and a little baby of like 5 months. She came from a long distance and she had I think she had less money to transport her to where she was going. And she was really desperate. And I just entered the bus when I saw, I was watching them talking through the window. And then I think the taxi man came and told her, you don't have enough money, first go back and get enough money, then you can come. And she was talking in the way she was talking to the young girl, like, what can we do? What are we going to do? You see, it seems like where she was coming from, there was danger. So I felt this and I said, I didn't know her completely, but I just say, I know I don't have a lot, but this situation is rescue. I just got out, and she was left with 10,000 Uganda shillings. I just said, I don't have, but I'm going to give this lady. So I picked 10,000 and I gave it to her. I said, this, please, you go and add on top of your extra, your transport and come. And then she felt, I don't know how completely, but I felt there was need to do something. So what I'm trying to say here is that when a woman is empowered, will not be in that desperate situation, not to make the right decision. This is the woman who was really in danger because she's left in the bus and there was risk of sexual abuse in the bus, like in the city, Mm-hmm. So an empowered woman will always make right decisions because she has the power, that economic power, to sort out the small issues that may cause danger for them and the family. So this is just a small story that I want to share with you. Thank you.
There is a question here. Here.
Thank you. I'm really, really touched, and I can feel you're talking from a place of love and actually from your soul or from something higher, but it really resonates. So thank you for your work. It's amazing. I was wondering, one of the things that you said, I forgot your name. Jane. Is about that you talk to everyone, not certain groups, and you take everyone with you on your journey. And I think that is so important, and it reminds me of something that Gandhi said. He said, whatever you do for me, but without me, you do against me. And I think that I hear that in all of your stories actually, that if you do something for someone, you really have to take them with you on the journey. And that's what I can really hear in your story. So I think you're just brilliant, so thank you. Yeah, good work.
I want to ask my colleagues who are monitoring the Twitter or other media if there are any questions. Yes, the conversation is so rich that we forgot almost about it. And so I'll come back to you and thank you so much. And then, yes, in the meantime, let's take...
Good afternoon, everyone. What I wanted just to appreciate is the way you defined the role of men. Because in all the stories, you can hear that man is a perpetrator, is right at the center. I'm from South Africa. We have a problem about gender-based violence. It's a big problem. And I feel sometimes that probably we need really to define what is the role of men. And sometimes in our strategies, as we define them, men and young men are not the target. The target is women. And I don't know whether is that successful, is that effective enough. But in South Africa, what happened is that the government, after being pushed by the civil society, decided to develop a gender-based violence strategy at a national level. But I think the biggest challenge is that there is no national without local. You can define a strategy at a national level, but if at a grassroots level, because that's where things are happening, there is no clear strategy. And now I think that is the biggest challenge, going back to the grassroots level and take that strategy that is kind of built in the air and bring it to the lowest level of society. But I also like the way Jane is, my second time to listen to Jane's story, because she had an engagement with another Jane from another continent. And through a conversation of Cody Institute in America, another Jane related her story, and also Jane related her story. And we started now discussing also the challenges and the strategies. But I like the way she used men to educate other men. I think to me that was powerful. And I think what I am grappling with as men is to define an effective role that I can play in my community. I'm working for an organization called SCET, Social Change Assistance Trust. It's working in 5 provinces. But I think I have a responsibility as men to play as a key role in my community. Not as part of, as a program officer, or as a man, or as a manager of SCET, or as a worker of SCET, but as a man in my community. I think I have a responsibility to play in South Africa. But another thing that I wanted also to reflect on is the issue of finding something good in a community. Something relevant and effective, a certain model that is powerful. But you discover that now you find people doing good work in terms of gender-based violence. But then we wonder what is needed to support that model or that work. And then somebody from outside will come with resources. And in most cases, in terms of projects that we've supported, you'll find that if there is an external support, then sometimes that external support comes with many problems, like conditions, restrictions, also sometimes a certain administrative burden to this person who has been doing this thing without administrative controls, but just doing the work, taking from her own resources.
Thank you so much. That's a really wonderful question about the role of men, and I will give you the floor in 1 second. I'm just mindful of the time, and I just wanted to take all of the questions and then let the speakers respond for one last round of contributions. So is there anything that you would like to share? Yeah?
There's a question from our online platform, and they're wondering whether you ever get tired of, of developments that aren't progressing when you yourself are working so hard to get to these developments and to get to that level. Are you ever tired of, working towards something, but the systemic change is not happening in a way?
Yeah. Do you ever get discouraged? Yeah. Great. And one last question.
Thank you very much, all of you, for sharing your amazing stories. It's been really interesting to hear. And a few people have mentioned about taking other people along in the journey. And so I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the role of women who are in these activist spaces and the role of taking along others who are not perhaps represented in these spaces. So women with intersectional identities, we know that of course Indigenous women are not so represented, minority women, women with disabilities, these types of women, and I just wanted to hear a little bit what you thought about whether we're doing enough to ensure that we are taking these women along with us in these journeys, and what we can do more.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So yes, please.
Starting with the last question, I think in society all categories of people exist, and so when you're doing an intervention, it's very, very unfair to leave others behind. Yeah, so please go along like, we didn't go into categories of people we work with, but it includes all those that you mentioned. And then on the issue that do we ever get tired, I must say every work, like for example in advocacy, it takes time for someone to realize to actually get some response to a specific work that they're advocating for. So as long as you have not yet achieved, even if you get tired, you rest, you start. Even if you meet obstacles, you rest, you start, because you're determined to reach the final goal. And then on the issue of men and the roles, there's a lot of complaints coming currently about interventions. People are complaining, it's women, and leaving out men. So I think there is need to involve everyone on board, but the level should matter. The level of vulnerability should be put into consideration. But I also think some of the occurrences influence the role of men in society. I'll give you an example, like the war that took place in northern Uganda. If you are to go to rural areas, you will find that it is women who have taken up the roles that even men were supposed to do. Especially like educating children at home, providing for the children, paying their school fees. At some point, I think during the war, there was a lot of I think humanitarian, when people were confined in camps, sort of this destroyed the culture there, especially destroyed the role, the culture, and the role of men in society. So in most cases, men were restricted in the camps. They were not supposed to go out to look for, actually, they would not even escort their women for security like it used to before. So many things happened in the process. And therefore, women felt everything has to be done by women. The men felt that. And so when they got out of the camps and went back home, like most of them now don't do a lot of work. It is the women going to fetch water. They're the ones going to the garden to weed. They're the ones going to, like everything. So if you want to see your family progressing as a woman, you cannot sit and look on. So that's how it has changed. I don't know what happens in society affects a lot the roles. So I don't know what can be done. Should we tackle it in a cultural way? Should we look at the causes and we try to tackle it? Let's look at the specific causes and we try to see what can be done. Thank you.
Answering the first question about men, I always try to encourage men to be part of feminist movement, because if they're part of the problem, they're part also of the solution. It's impossible to get equality without men in our team. If men aren't willing to hear or be part of the change, it is impossible. So I always encourage men and try to tell women that are in collectives to include men in everything. An example with a drawing that was like viral, when this football player used it, he decided to use it. He decided to be part of this movement by himself, and that put the femicide problem in Mexico in all the portals of sports that are mostly seen by men. And that was great because it is something that men don't usually discuss. So this, I think men have to be part of it. And the second question, I don't remember which was.
Do you get tired?
Yes, of course, we get tired. We're human. But I think that, I get tired because I don't see any change. But then I need to feel I'm doing something, and that is the energy I get to continue working. But I think everybody gets tired. I think it's normal. And the third, I don't remember. Sorry, I have short memory.
About intersectional identities.
Of course, in my case, I try to represent many different kind of people and try to get out of my little bubble and meet different types of stories, people. I always try to do like force myself to meet different people and not be comfortable in my little bubble. And I think that is important to not only to work but to listen. We usually forget to listen.
Thank you. To start with your question about engaging men. Coming from a patriarchal society where men are the president and the center of the perpetrator of anything, so basically we bring women to be the center of the conversation, making sure that whatever the design, we are designing programs on women, they understand and they take, lead in supporting the conversation. This one, we protect women, we protect girls. If they are to marry off their daughters at tender age or force them to undergo female genital mutilation, then it means it will reduce, as well as also reducing a lot of GBV at the household level for women, saying that the woman has understand a lot of information rather than the man. And slowly it is working. And some of the men who sometimes even become rebel, in some of this conversation, we still make them our counterpart and give them role, and those areas become them, they are the point man, and report on issues on gender-based violence, turning around the story and make them report. So slowly it is working, but making sure women are the center of the conversation. How do men understand that the gender around issues on women and girls is still vulnerable? With looking at the society, that it give a boy child an upper hand rather than a woman. So basically that's how we are looking at. On the second question around issues on intersectionality, I think back to the community I come from, different level in the society, especially if you're born a woman or a girl, you're very much disadvantaged. Talking about a whole woman like me, who is not physically challenged. What about, a person who living with a disability, a woman in that society? You are not counted for, your voice is not there. Even in terms of decision, you are not there. The same thing to adolescents, girls. If you're in the middle, that you never finish school, you have a child, you've not transited to school, you are there. And yet worse if you're not married. Because if you're not married, you're also given names. So you are just in the middle. You're not for your family. You also don't have something to support for you. So these are the voices that 100% we take keen on and making sure that we give them preference in terms of participating, in terms of making decisions, and making sure that we push the agenda even in the community where we come from. Women living with disabilities are given priority. Young girls, adolescents, girls, single mothers, or even widows who have actually their husband have died. It is their sons who take over when their husband died, or even their brother-in-law. So sometimes there's a lot of things that if you're not really silent around issues on discussion in the community, and these are the things that we give priority, not that looking at them, because if you also subject them and we speak, I cannot speak on women with disability. We normally say, you cannot, speak on my behalf. They have to be present so that they press their issues. On the last question,
if we are tired.
Of course we are human being. And as a human being, sometimes you get anger, you get tired. But with a passion, with the issues you wanted to achieve, and determination, those are some of the things that it keep on giving you hope. It keep on giving you resilience that yes, even if it is tough, I'll still achieve. For example, like me, I have a daughter who is 8 years old, and these are some of the inspiration. I say, if I manage to walk through whatever I went through and I'm back giving home to millions of girls, my daughter have to live in an environment that she read my story and become more positive and more resilient in this world. So these are some of the things that when also look back, look for some hope that inspire you. Not a lot of things that, it gives you a lot of disadvantage and put you down. Look for something that will give you a lot of hope and move away with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You are wonderful, you are strong, you are inspiring, and you are too. This brings us to the end of our event, but we have a special invitation to go for the opening of an exhibition with the same name, Stories of Women Standing Up for Justice, at the atrium of City Hall. Here, just a short walk from where we are, and there will also be drinks and refreshments there, so we can continue the conversation in a more informal setting. Thank you so much.